Hey everybody, Will here back again with the weather, and today's video is a very serious video. If you have friends or relatives, or if you live in East Texas, much of Louisiana, as well as much of Mississippi, be sure to share this with them, or if you live here, be sure to pay close attention to this video, because a likely severe weather outbreak and potentially a tornado outbreak is coming to these areas in the next few days. We're going to hop into all the details, timings, locations, and highest threats. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so first things first, we're going to take a look at the Storm Prediction Center's outlook for tomorrow, Monday afternoon. We have a slight risk in place for much of central into eastern Texas, as well as extreme western parts of Louisiana. And right in the middle of it, we have an enhanced risk. This is where the highest threat is going to be. Areas like Houston, Texas, Austin, Texas, Pasadena, Waco, you guys are all in this enhanced risk. You have a pretty significant tornado threat in these areas in yellow around it: San Antonio, Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, and Plano. You guys also have a threat. However, the highest threat is going to be in this orange area. If we take a look at the tornado probabilities, they're highest in that enhanced risk area. Once again, Houston, Austin, Pasadena, Waco, and Killeen, Texas. You guys are all in that yellow risk, which is a 10% risk of tornadoes. You can also see those little black lines in the risk. That's a hatched risk. That means there is a threat for violent tornadoes, EF2 or stronger. This is a significant threat, and if you live in these areas, you need to have a way to receive warnings. If we take a look at the wind threat, we have a 30% risk for much of this enhanced risk area. There's a pretty good shot of widespread damaging winds throughout this area. And if we take a look at the hail threat, there's a pretty high threat across central and eastern Texas, and just to the west of this, there's this hatched area, and that's where very large hail is possible in excess of golf ball size. Areas in that hatch risk include San Antonio, Austin, Waco, Killeen, Round Rock, Texas. You guys can all see some very large hail. And of course, to the east of that, hail is still likely, however, it may not be as large. But of course, our biggest threat is going to be those strong to violent tornadoes possibly. And I'll show you guys simulated radar as well as some timing on that in a minute. But first things first, we're going to look at day 3, Tuesday's outlook. So taking a look at Tuesday's risk, it's even higher. Across parts of southeastern Louisiana into south and central Mississippi, you guys have a very high tornado threat. Around this enhanced risk, you guys also have a tornado threat. Much of central and southern Louisiana, much of central and southern Mississippi, even western parts of Alabama. You guys are all under the risk for a severe weather outbreak. Areas under that red, that moderate, are Baton Rouge, Jackson, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Clinton, Mississippi, and Pearl, Mississippi. Areas in that orange risk, not as much confidence. However, there's still a pretty high threat of severe weather. New Orleans, Lafayette, Tuscaloosa, Gulfport, Mississippi. And if you're in that slight risk, don't let your guard down. Montgomery, Mobile, Beaumont, Texas, Lake Charles even, Port Arthur. There's still potential for isolated severe weather. However, if you're in those orange and red areas, that is where severe weather is most likely, including violent tornadoes. And day 3 moderate risks like this are very uncommon. There's been 18 of them in the last 20 years, and this is very significant. I would not be surprised if we get closer to this if this risk went to high. However, there are some deciding factors. One of those is storm mode. If you have a bunch of discrete supercells and the models start showing that the day before the event, absolutely, I think we'd go to high risk. However, if things get messy, if there's a bunch of just thunderstorms and showers kind of clogging up that energy for those supercells, then I think it's going to stay moderate. It really just depends on the storm mode. If we have a line, the tornado threat's going to be lower. There's still a threat for tornadoes with the wind shear. However, if they're not discrete, the odds for violent tornadoes and long track tornadoes is much lower. We're going to have to wait and see on that in the next couple of days as more model runs come out and we get some more confidence. But anyways, I'll switch over to the models now and show you guys some timing, locations, and also another look at the setup. Alrighty, so we're taking a look at the HRRR, the high resolution model. The date and time is above my head right here. As you can see, this is Monday at 9 a.m. and we have widespread showers across the area as moisture surges north from the Gulf. And as we go toward 10 o'clock into noon, you can see showers and thunderstorms develop pretty widespread across southern Oklahoma and northern Texas. These storms are going to remain mainly elevated, so large hail is going to be the main threat with these, and maybe some damaging winds. However, tornadoes should not be a threat with these storms. As we go later into the afternoon hours, this will change. As we go into 12 o'clock, 1, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5, you can see storms start to develop in central Texas. These right here are going to have the risk of large hail and even maybe a tornado or two. As they push off to the east, the tornado threat should increase a bit as well as the damaging winds. However, when these first form, large hail should be the biggest threat. As we go into 6 and 7 p.m., these start to push to the east and expand in coverage, and we basically have this area of scattered supercells, and tornadoes are going to be a threat with these. Large hail is also possible. Damaging winds are possible, and this is where that enhanced risk is. there could be a strong tornado in here as well. As we go into the overnight hours, 9, 10, 11, it starts to form into a line of thunderstorms. If these cells down here remain discrete, tornado potential is a bit higher. Up here, damaging winds and maybe even some large hail are the biggest threat. So areas like Houston in the evening hours, you guys could see some large hail and maybe even a tornado in the area. Dallas, you're going to be a bit earlier in the day, and this will move into Louisiana during the overnight hours. And as we go into 2, 3, 4 a.m., this line of thunderstorms is really getting together all the way up from Arkansas down into the southern part of Texas. There could be some spin-up tornadoes in this line, however, I think damaging winds are going to remain the biggest threat. If you see these cells ahead of the line, if we get anything like this that are able to take advantage of that strong wind shear, there could be some tornado potential in these. As we go late into the overnight, into the early morning hours, this really pushes into Louisiana. I think storms should weaken a little bit overnight because there is less instability for these storms to feed off of as we lose daytime heating. And then tomorrow morning, instability will start to increase again into the day, and this line should start to re-strengthen as it moves into that moderate risk area. And you can see by around 1 p.m. we have this strong line of storms anywhere from Arkansas down into Louisiana. And if storms remain linear like this, damaging winds are going to be the biggest threat. But you can see it wants to have these cells develop out ahead of the line. And if this does happen, the tornado threat is going to be highest in those, potentially violent tornadoes, especially with the dynamics we have in place. That's as far out as the HRR goes, so I'll switch over to the NAM model now. At the same time, you can see it has it a little bit more to the west, so timing is a little bit in question. However, we know storms are going to develop Monday afternoon into the evening and push across much of Louisiana during the overnight hours. And as we go into Tuesday afternoon, it pushes into Mississippi. And this model also likes the idea of a line of storms with maybe some scattered supercells out ahead of it. We'll have to wait and see. That is our biggest decider in a moderate versus a high risk, is the storm mode like I mentioned earlier. So Mississippi, you should start seeing impacts early to mid-afternoon, and then this pushes through during the afternoon into the evening hours. And by the time we get late into the overnight hours, it starts pushing into Alabama with a damaging wind and maybe even a tornado threat. But once again, we'll lose daytime heating, so storms should start to weaken a little bit. Now we'll take a look at some of the severe weather values. If we take a look at the Cape, the energy for these storms, you could see at Monday at 6 p.m. there's a lot of Cape in eastern Texas, as well as back into parts of central Texas. There is more than enough instability for severe thunderstorms to develop. You got values in excess of 2,000 in some spots. You only need 500 to 1,000 to support strong to severe storms. And as we go later into the evening, it pushes off to the east, and it really starts to expand in coverage. And where this instability is highest is where severe thunderstorms are going to be likely. And as we go into the overnight hours, it pushes off to the east into parts of Louisiana, but you can see those values really decrease as we lose daytime heating. And then as we go into tomorrow, as the sun comes out in parts of Mississippi and southern Louisiana, those values start to rise again. You got values of 1,500 up to 2,000 in these areas down here, and this is where that moderate risk is in effect. You can see through the day these values increase, and then they push off toward the east towards Alabama. There's going to be more changes as new models roll in, but it gives a general idea that there's going to be a lot of instability in Texas during the afternoon, and there's going to be more instability in Mississippi during Tuesday afternoon. Now, if we look at the significant tornado parameters, it's basically how favorable conditions are for significant tornadoes. It's on a scale of 1 to 10. The darker the colors, the more favorable the conditions are for tornadoes. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see a tornado, it's just how favorable the conditions are. So as we go into Monday and the midday into the afternoon, you can see these values really start to rise across parts of eastern Texas as instability increases as well as wind shear. And you can see by midday into the evening, we have this corridor across central and the eastern Texas of values of 5, 6, 7, maybe even higher in some spots. It just shows that tornado conditions are favorable in this area. And as we go later into the evening, into the overnight hours, it starts to push off to the east, and you can see these values are pretty high across much of eastern Texas. And then as we lose daytime heating, they start to dwindle a little bit. But as we go into tomorrow morning, as daytime heating starts to come into play, these values start to rise again across south central Louisiana, moving into Mississippi by midday on Tuesday. And as you can see here, Tuesday afternoon, once again, we have higher values, anywhere from 5 to 8, maybe even locally higher. And then as we go into the evening, it starts to push off into Alabama and starts to decrease as we lose daytime heating once again. This gives a general idea that conditions will be favorable for tornadic development. So to sum it all up, this area, Monday afternoon into the evening hours. This area, early Tuesday morning into early Tuesday afternoon. And this area over here, where that moderate risk is in play, Tuesday afternoon into the early evening. And if you live in any of these circled areas or even around these circled areas, you need to have a way to receive warnings. In parts of Mississippi and Louisiana, the Storm Prediction Center is mentioning the words possible tornado outbreak. And that's very strong wording coming from them because they try to be pretty conservative when it comes to the forecasts. So that really raises an alarm. So like I said, if you live in these areas, have a way to receive warnings. Know what to do if a tornado warning is issued for your area. Know where your safe place is. And be prepared in advance. Anyways, that sums up today's video. Like I said, if you know anyone in these areas, or if you live in these areas, be sure to be prepared. Share this video with anyone you know that does live in these areas. I really want to get the word out on this, and let as many people know as possible ahead of time. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day. Stay safe.